Tonight, we journey back in time. The sun is sinking slowly toward the horizon, painting the sea in shades of gold, amber, and fading crimson. Gentle waves roll against the hulls of merchant ships resting quietly in crowded harbors. The scent of salt lingers in the evening air. Torches are beginning to glow along stone quays where sailors unload their final cargoes before nightfall. Across distant lands, from the shores of Greece to the valleys of Egypt, from the cities of the Levant to the great capitals of Anatolia, people are settling into the familiar rhythm of another ordinary evening. Yet none of them know that they are living through the final moments of an age. Stay with me until the very end of our journey tonight, because there is a remarkable insight waiting for us there, one hidden within the ruins of forgotten kingdoms, a lesson that historians, archaeologists, and even modern societies continue to wrestle with today. It is a discovery that transforms the way we understand not only the ancient world, but our own. For now, though, let your mind drift far away from the concerns of the present. Imagine standing on a hillside overlooking a thriving city more than 3,000 years ago. Below you, streets are alive with movement. Merchants call out to customers in marketplaces filled with copper tools, colorful textiles, jars of fragrant oils, and precious goods brought from lands so distant that most people will never see them. Children chase one another through narrow alleys. Farmers return from fertile fields carrying baskets heavy with grain. Scribes bend over clay tablets, recording transactions, treaties, and messages destined for foreign kings. The city feels eternal. Its walls have stood for generations. Its rulers command vast armies. Its temples rise toward the heavens. Its people believe tomorrow will arrive much like today. And why wouldn't they? Their world is prosperous, connected, advanced, powerful. Across thousands of miles, great civilizations are linked together like stars in a vast constellation. Egyptian pharaohs exchange gifts with Hittite kings. Mycenaean merchants sail across glittering seas carrying luxury goods between distant ports. Diplomats write letters to one another on clay tablets. Precious metals move through carefully maintained trade networks. Entire economies depend upon the steady flow of ships, caravans, and human cooperation. It is one of the most sophisticated worlds humanity has ever built. And it is about to disappear. Not gradually. Not over centuries. But within the span of a few generations. Something is coming. A slow-moving storm that no one fully understands. A series of events so profound that entire kingdoms will vanish from history. Cities that once echoed with conversation and music will fall silent. Magnificent palaces will burn. Trade routes that connected continents will collapse. Knowledge accumulated across centuries will be forgotten. Writing systems will disappear. Names of kings will fade into dust. And for hundreds of years afterward, many people will no longer remember what came before. Perhaps that is what makes this story feel so haunting. These people were not expecting the end. They were not living in a world that seemed fragile. They were not standing at the edge of an obvious cliff. They were living their lives, making plans, raising families, building homes, signing treaties, celebrating harvests, watching sunsets, just as countless people do today. And maybe that is why the Bronze Age collapse continues to fascinate us more than 3,000 years later. Because beneath the ruins and broken walls lies something deeply human. A reminder that even the mightiest civilizations can appear unshakable right before they begin to crumble. As darkness settles over the ancient Mediterranean, lanterns flicker in palace courtyards. Guards take their positions along city walls. Priests offer evening prayers in temples dedicated to gods whose names are now barely remembered. Somewhere, a king reviews reports from distant provinces. Somewhere else, a merchant calculates the profits from a successful voyage. They do not know that future generations will search for their traces among buried stones. They do not know that archaeologists thousands of years later will carefully brush dust from their abandoned cities, trying to piece together the story of what happened. Most of all, they do not know that they are standing at the threshold of one of history's greatest mysteries. A mystery written in ash. A mystery preserved in shattered pottery. A mystery whispered through ruined walls and forgotten roads. Tonight, we will walk gently through that vanished world. We will wander through bustling ports filled with ships from distant lands. We will stand inside grand palaces illuminated by torchlight. We will listen to the voices of kings, merchants, sailors, and scribes whose lives unfolded during the final years of a remarkable age. And together, we will witness how an interconnected world, one that seemed permanent and secure, slowly fell silent. Before we continue our journey, tell me in the comments where you're listening from tonight. Perhaps you're listening beneath a quiet night sky. Perhaps rain is tapping softly against your window. Or perhaps the world around you is already asleep. Wherever you are, settle comfortably. Allow your breathing to slow. Let your shoulders relax. Feel the noise of the modern world gradually fade into the distance. The sea is calm. The stars are beginning to emerge overhead. The ships are resting in the harbor. And somewhere beyond the horizon, history is preparing to change forever. Let us begin. The morning sun rises gently over a world connected by water, wind, and trust. Long before modern borders or maps, a vast network of civilization stretched across the eastern Mediterranean and the Near East. Though separated by mountains, deserts, and seas, powerful kingdoms remained linked through trade, diplomacy, and mutual dependence. Imagine standing upon the deck of a merchant vessel as dawn breaks across the sea. The air is cool. The horizon glows with pale gold. The sail above you catches a steady breeze as the ship glides through calm waters. Beneath your feet lie copper from Cyprus, fine pottery from distant workshops, ivory from Africa, precious stones that have crossed countless hands. Every object tells a story. Every cargo depends upon people who may never meet. The Bronze Age was not simply an age of kingdoms. It was an age of remarkable connections. Kings exchanged gifts. Merchants crossed seas. Scribes copied letters destined for distant courts. Ideas, resources, and people moved constantly between lands. To the south lay Egypt, enriched by the Nile and connected to the wider world through trade and diplomacy. To the north stood the Hittite Empire, ruling from Medusa with armies, diplomats, and scribes whose clay tablets still survive today. Across the Aegean flourished the Mycenaean kingdoms, whose fortified palaces and skilled craftsmen traded widely throughout the Mediterranean. Along the eastern coast, ports such as Ugarit became meeting places where merchants speaking many languages exchanged goods from every direction. The harbors echoed with voices. Ships arrived daily. Markets overflowed. It was a world alive with movement, alive with exchange. Yet perhaps its greatest achievement was not wealth. It was interdependence. Consider a bronze sword. It may appear to have been made by a single craftsman. Yet bronze required both copper and tin, materials often mined far apart. Without trade, the sword could not exist. Without stable relationships, bronze production faltered. Most people never saw this invisible network. A farmer worried about his harvest. A fisherman watched the weather. A potter shaped clay. Yet each depended upon connections stretching far beyond the horizon. There is something familiar about that. Even today, we notice the finished product more easily than the countless journeys that made it possible. For generations, this system worked remarkably well. Trade flourished. Diplomacy endured. The rulers of great kingdoms even addressed one another as brothers. Some of their letters still survive. They exchanged gifts, requested assistance, arranged royal marriages, complained about delayed shipments, settled disputes. The words feel surprisingly familiar. One remarkable collection, known as the Amarna Letters, preserves this diplomatic world in extraordinary detail. Written in cuneiform during the 14th century BCE, these messages reveal rulers maintaining alliances across enormous distances. For a brief moment in history, the Eastern Mediterranean enjoyed an international system unlike anything that had existed before. The age appeared secure, predictable, enduring. Yet we know something its people did not. The ships crossing these peaceful waters were sailing toward uncertain horizons. The letters between kings belonged to a world living on borrowed time. Small cracks had already begun to form beneath the surface. But for now, the harbors remained busy. The markets remained full. Merchants continued their voyages. Children continued their games. The world felt permanent. As evening settles once more across the Mediterranean, the sails still glow beneath the fading sun. The sea remains calm. The kingdoms remain strong. Yet somewhere beyond the horizon, unseen forces are beginning to gather. Soon, the first cracks will appear. Let us continue our journey a little deeper into this vanished world. The sea is calm tonight. Moonlight dances across the Mediterranean while distant harbor fires glow against the darkness. Merchant ships rest quietly at anchor. Families gather behind wooden doors, sharing evening meals, unaware that history is preparing to change their world forever. For now, life feels secure, prosperous, endless. Imagine approaching one of the great Bronze Age cities after days on dusty roads. Massive stone walls rise before you, guarded by towering gates. Beyond them comes the steady rhythm of hammers, the voices of merchants, the creak of wagons, and the comforting sound of thousands of ordinary lives unfolding together. Inside, workshops, temples, and homes fill winding streets scented with fresh bread, olive oil, and burning cedar. Traders display goods from distant kingdoms. Craftsmen shape bronze, carve ivory, and weave fine textiles using skills passed down through generations. No one is expecting disaster. They are simply living. Across Greece, the mighty Mycenaean citadels crown rocky hills, their enormous stone walls so impressive that later generations believed only giants could have built them. Yet these monuments were the work of countless human hands, guided by remarkable planning and determination. Within their palaces, scribes carefully recorded harvests, livestock, weapons, and labor. Every resource was counted. Every decision flowed from the palace at the heart of the kingdom. Far to the east, the Hittite capital of Hattusa stands behind monumental gates watched by carved lions and sphinxes. Priests complete evening rituals while families gather around warm hearths. To its people, tomorrow seems certain. Further south, Egypt flourishes beside the Nile. Boats glide along its waters carrying grain, stone, and papyrus. Brilliantly painted temples rise above fertile fields, while officials and scribes keep the kingdom running with quiet precision. Together, these civilizations are connected by an extraordinary network of trade. Copper, tin, ivory, spices, fine cloth, precious oils, and ideas travel from one kingdom to another. Merchants exchange not only goods, but stories, inventions, beliefs, and knowledge. It is a world built on connection. A world at the height of its confidence. As evening settles once more, markets fall silent, smoke rises from cooking fires, and the streets grow peaceful beneath the fading light. Tomorrow promises another harvest, another voyage, another prosperous day. No one sees the fragile threads beginning to tighten beneath this golden age. The city still stands strong. Their rulers still seem powerful. Their future still appears certain. But somewhere beyond the horizon, the first quiet echoes of change have already begun. For now, let us simply linger a little longer in this peaceful world and enjoy one final evening before history takes its unforgettable turn. The first signs are easy to miss. That is often how great changes begin. Not with armies at the gates or kings announcing the end of an age, but with small disruptions that seem almost ordinary. A smaller harvest. A delayed shipment. A troubling message from a distant city. A merchant noticing fewer ships entering the harbor. Alone, each means very little. Together, they tell another story. As the sun rises over the Mediterranean, fields still sway in the breeze, farmers tend their crops, and markets open as they always have. Yet beneath this familiar rhythm, quiet pressures are beginning to build. One of the greatest concerns may have been water. Evidence from ancient pollen, lake sediments, and cave formations suggests that parts of the eastern Mediterranean experienced prolonged drought during this period. Historians agree the climate changed, though they continue debating how much that change contributed to the collapse. Civilizations rarely fall for a single reason. Still, in a world built on farming, even a few poor harvests could ripple through entire kingdoms. Food became scarcer, prices rose, and uncertainty slowly replaced confidence. Nature may have brought another challenge as well. The eastern Mediterranean has always been prone to earthquakes, and archaeology shows that several Bronze Age cities suffered serious damage. Whether these disasters formed part of a larger pattern remains debated, but for societies already under pressure, even one destructive quake could deepen existing problems. Trade also became less dependable. Copper failed to arrive. Caravans disappeared. Political tensions interrupted familiar routes. The vast network that connected kingdoms across sea and land began to weaken. Its greatest strength, its interconnectedness, also became its greatest vulnerability. A shortage in one region soon affected another. In royal palaces, letters spoke of food shortages, unrest, and requests for aid. Kings who once projected confidence now struggled with problems beyond their control. Yet ordinary people carried on. Children were born, merchants opened their stalls, sailors prepared their ships, believing difficult times would eventually pass. Perhaps that is the most human part of this story. Few realized they were living through the beginning of one of history's greatest collapses. As evening settles once more, the cities still shine, the markets remain open, and the sea is as peaceful as ever. But beneath that calm, the foundations are beginning to shift. The first cracks have appeared. Soon, they will become impossible to ignore. There are moments in history when an entire world quietly begins to fade. Not all at once. Not in a single battle. But city by city. Kingdom by kingdom. Across the eastern Mediterranean, the great powers of the Bronze Age were entering their final chapter. Yet each place experienced it differently. Some cities declined slowly. Others were destroyed. Some adapted and survived, while others disappeared almost without a trace. One of the clearest examples is Ugarit, a thriving port on the coast of modern Syria. Its merchants traded across the Mediterranean, and its scribes recorded treaties, business, and royal letters. Then came messages warning of danger approaching from the sea. Soon after, the records ended. The city was burned. Its harbor fell silent. Its people vanished from history. Further west, the Mycenaean kingdoms of Greece also began to crumble. Great palaces that once directed trade, government, and daily life were destroyed or abandoned. Their writing system disappeared, and the palace economy that had held these kingdoms together simply ceased to exist. To the east, the mighty Hittite Empire met a similar fate. Its capital, Hattusa, was eventually abandoned, ending one of the ancient world's greatest powers. Streets once filled with officials, priests, and merchants slowly gave way to silence. Egypt faced these same turbulent years but endured. The reign of Ramesses III records fierce battles against groups arriving by land and sea, showing that while Egypt survived, it too was tested. Together, archaeology reveals the same pattern across much of the region: burned cities, abandoned settlements, weakened trade, and broken political systems. Behind every ruined palace were ordinary people. Bakers, sailors, farmers, scribes, and families who believed tomorrow would look much like yesterday. They had no way of knowing they were witnessing the end of an age. As night falls across the ancient Mediterranean, smoke rises above distant cities, harbors grow quiet, and the old world slowly unravels. But one mystery still remains. Who were the people appearing in Egyptian records during these troubled years? Invaders? Migrants? Refugees? Or something far more complex? Our journey now turns toward the enduring mystery of the Sea Peoples. The sea has always inspired stories. Standing beside the water at night, it is easy to understand why. Beyond the moonlit waves lies only darkness, hiding distant shores and unknown travelers. For the civilizations of the Bronze Age, the sea was both a highway and a mystery. It carried merchants, diplomats, and ideas across the Mediterranean, but it could also deliver uncertainty without warning. From that uncertain horizon comes one of history's greatest mysteries: the people we now call the Sea Peoples. For more than a century, historians have debated who they were. The name suggests a single powerful nation, but the evidence tells a far more complex story. Our best clues come from Egypt. During the reign of Pharaoh Ramesses III, temple inscriptions describe battles against several foreign groups arriving by land and sea. The carvings show crowded ships, fierce fighting, and warriors wearing distinctive feathered helmets. They celebrate Egypt's victories and remain some of the most famous images from the end of the Bronze Age. But they are not neutral records. Like many royal inscriptions, they were designed to honor the pharaoh. Historians therefore read them carefully, separating political celebration from historical evidence. What can we say with confidence? Egypt encountered foreign groups during a time of widespread instability. Populations were moving across the eastern Mediterranean, kingdoms were under pressure, and conflict became increasingly common. Beyond that, certainty fades. Many scholars now believe the Sea Peoples were not one nation but many different groups. Some may have been migrants driven from their homes by drought or famine. Others may have been mercenaries, traders, refugees, or raiders. Different communities may have joined together as the old political order collapsed around them. Imagine a family watching harvests fail year after year. Trade has slowed. Food is scarce. Remaining at home feels more dangerous than leaving. So they load their belongings onto wagons or ships and search for a safer future. Across history, countless people have made similar journeys. This perspective changes the story. Rather than seeing only invaders, we begin to see ordinary people responding to extraordinary circumstances. Archaeology supports this more nuanced view. New discoveries continue to reshape old ideas, reminding us that history is rarely simple. Every excavation uncovers another fragment, but no single discovery has solved the mystery completely. Perhaps that is why the Sea Peoples continue to fascinate us. They remind us that the past does not always provide easy answers. As moonlight shimmers across the Mediterranean, ships continue to cross the dark water. Some carry merchants. Others carry soldiers. Others carry families searching for hope. Together they become part of a much larger story, one shaped by climate change, failing trade, migration, war, and political instability. Modern historians increasingly agree that no single enemy destroyed the Bronze Age world. Instead, many pressures arrived at once, each making the next crisis more difficult to survive. The Sea Peoples were part of that storm. Not the whole storm. As the waves roll gently onto the shore, the old world continues to fade. Great palaces have fallen. Trade routes are breaking apart. Ancient kingdoms are disappearing into history. Soon, a quieter age will begin. Not an age without people or culture, but one where many of the brilliant connections that once united the Mediterranean have been lost. And from that silence, a new chapter of history will slowly emerge. The silence did not arrive in a single moment. It settled slowly, like evening spreading across the Mediterranean. The great palaces were gone. Royal courts fell quiet. The clay tablets stopped. The voices of kings faded into history. Yet life did not end. Imagine waking in a village that survived the turmoil. The sun still rises. Fields still need tending. Fishermen still launch their boats. Children still laugh. But the world feels smaller. Merchants arrive less often. Familiar trade routes have disappeared, and stories from distant lands speak of abandoned cities and fallen kingdoms. Historians sometimes call this period a dark age, especially in Greece, but the name can be misleading. It was not an age without people or culture. It is called dark mainly because far fewer written records survive. The past becomes quieter, not empty. Without the great palace economies, communities relied more on themselves. Large cities shrank, villages became more important, and local leaders replaced distant rulers. The interconnected Bronze Age world gave way to a simpler, more regional way of life. Perhaps the greatest loss was writing. In much of Greece, the linear script disappeared for centuries. Stories that had once been recorded on clay tablets now lived in memory alone, passed from one generation to the next around evening fires. History survived through voices instead of books. Even so, people endured. Farmers planted new harvests. Artisans continued their crafts. Families rebuilt their lives. Human resilience quietly replaced imperial power. As decades passed, new traditions emerged. Communities adapted, technologies evolved, and fresh ideas slowly took root. The old world had vanished, but another was already beginning to grow. This is something archaeology sometimes struggles to show. Ruined palaces capture our attention, yet survival often leaves only modest traces: a repaired fishing boat, a small farming village, a handmade tool passed from parent to child. Those humble signs matter just as much as the grand cities. As night settles over the Mediterranean once more, the same stars shine above abandoned palaces and newly planted fields alike. Empires have fallen, but life continues. The Bronze Age ended. Humanity did not. Within this quiet age lay the seeds of future civilizations, new kingdoms, and new ideas that would shape the ancient world for centuries to come. The silence was never the end. It was simply the space between one chapter and the next. And so, after centuries of uncertainty, the horizon slowly brightens once more. The old Bronze Age world will never fully return. Many cities remain in ruins, and many traditions are lost forever. Yet humanity begins to rebuild. A new generation grows up knowing only the quieter world that followed the collapse. To them, the great palace kingdoms are already becoming stories. Even so, the past leaves behind its gifts. Knowledge survives. Skills survive. People survive. Along the eastern Mediterranean, seafaring traders such as the Phoenicians expand their influence, reconnecting distant shores through commerce and exploration. New trade routes slowly replace the old ones, and the sea once again becomes a bridge between cultures. Writing also begins a new chapter. Alphabetic systems spread more widely, making reading and writing simpler than many earlier scripts. Ideas travel farther, stories are preserved, and knowledge finds new life. In time, new kingdoms emerge. Greece gradually recovers. Powerful states rise in the Near East. The foundations are laid for the civilizations that will later shape much of the ancient world. Perhaps that is the true lesson of the Bronze Age collapse. Civilizations are not permanent, but neither are their hardships. The Bronze Age kingdoms disappeared, yet humanity endured. People adapted, rebuilt, and created something new from what remained. History is not only a story of endings. It is also a story of resilience, of renewal, of hope quietly returning after darkness. As our journey comes to a close, picture the Mediterranean beneath a peaceful night sky. Gentle waves wash against ancient shores. The ruins of forgotten cities rest beneath the moon, while far out at sea, a single ship carries tomorrow toward the horizon. The old world has ended. Another has already begun. Thank you for spending part of your evening with Serene Echoes. If you enjoyed this peaceful journey through history, please subscribe for more relaxing stories from the ancient world. Until next time, rest well and let history gently whisper you to sleep.